Hey folks, welcome back to DIY guitar making. I am just going to do a quick update video here as I'm really getting into some of the serious work here with guitar number 119. This is a guitar that I'm building for Doug in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and there's some interesting things here I want to talk about, things that me and him decided we wanted to do, and even just some little nitpicky things that have occurred as a result of my own evolution in understanding what I'm trying to do. But anyway, before we get into any of that, let me just say, if you like what I do and you get a little something out of the lessons that I teach here, do me a favor and go to ericschaferguitars.com and check out the online courses that I offer there, and also the schedule for the hands-on workshops. You can see the various dates for when I'm having students come out here and build their own flat top acoustic guitar with me, and you can sign up there as well. So why don't we just go down the line here and I'll talk about some of the coolest things. First of all, what I think is really cool, and I've more and more have just been making this a mainstay in my work here, and that is Port Orford cedar for guitar necks, okay? Not for tops, although it's a fine softwood for a top as well, but I am very partial to it for guitar necks, and that's simply for the lightweight aspect of it. Port Orford cedar has a very good stiffness to weight ratio. It has essentially the same stability as Honduran mahogany. Now, when I say stability, there's a couple important numbers to keep in mind here, and probably the most important one, if you're, say, looking up this wood on wooddatabase.com, which is an excellent resource for comparing different woods, by the way. If you're looking it up there, one of the most important numbers to look for is the TR ratio, which stands for the tangential radial ratio. So it's a ratio of the amount of shrinkage that's experienced on a piece of wood between its radial face and its tangential face, okay? So what makes a wood highly unstable and prone to cupping and warping and all that sort of nasty things that can happen to wood, twisting of the neck, things like that. What makes that more possible is a bad TR ratio, because a bad TR ratio means that the tangential face, for example, will shrink more or less than the radial face, and that's why it twists, that's why it cups. In theory, if you had a piece of wood that had just perfectly even volumetric shrinkage, then you wouldn't experience any warping or cupping anywhere on any face. The whole piece of wood would actually just shrink in size when it is low humidity and grow in size when it's high humidity, right? And there's less issues with that, obviously. So having a good TR ratio means you're going to have a very stable piece of wood. I think in combination with having a good modulus of elasticity, which is another number that you can find on wooddatabase.com. That's a fun site to play around with just to compare different woods, by the way, which I already mentioned. But anyway, the TR ratio for Port Orford cedar is 1.5, which is the same as the TR ratio for Honduran mahogany, and the modulus of elasticity is not the same, but very similar between the two woods. So it's a real winner on stability, but then where it really gets my attention is on weight. It is noticeably lightweight, and just to put a number to it, 29 pounds, foot-pounds, whatever the unit of measurement is for weight that they use. 29 pounds compared to Honduran mahogany, which is something like, I'm going off the top of my head here, folks, something like 36 pounds. So quite a bit heavier. But again, this is something, you don't even need numbers sometimes when you're dealing with a difference like this. This is something you can truly feel just by picking up the piece of wood and comparing the two. So anyway, check it out, guys, if you're ever interested in having an extremely neck light guitar, like, for example, this guitar, which is guitar number 49. I've had here for quite a while, actually. It's one of my favorites that I have here in the shop, and part of the reason I love it so much is the Port Orford cedar neck. This guitar is exceptionally light overall, and exceptionally light, especially on the neck side. So you know how if you get a very neck heavy guitar, it tends to the neck wants to dive a little bit in your left hand. Okay, so that's the Port Orford cedar. Let's take a look at this Tasmanian blackwood back and sides that I'm using. It's in the acacia family, which is the same family as koa, so you might notice right off the bat, and actually I'll show you on this guitar, might be a little easier to see the finished product here. You might notice right off the bat it kind of looks like koa, with less figure than you typically see on koa, and with a little bit more of these dark, kind of almost like dirty streaks running through it. I actually often call this dirty koa because that's what it makes me think of. It's like koa with a little bit of grunge to it, and I think that's cool. And tonally it holds up. Hold on, let me find the node. I won't say it's as good as Wengi. I don't like it as much as Wengi, but I really like it, which is why it stays in my sort of arsenal here. Okay, so that is Tasmanian blackwood. And moving on here, I wanted to talk just briefly about this pattern that you see drawn out. It's in pencil, so I'm not sure if you can see that too well there. But if you guys have been following me for a little bit, you know that at least for the last couple years, I've been very fond of this modified lattice bracing that I came up with. And of course, because I came up with it, I'm very fond of it. I'm biased for that reason. But more and more, I just become more and more confident that this is the best way to brace a back if you want to get an even distribution of stiffness across the back. And hey, if you're building steel string guitars, I think, generally speaking, that's what you want. You want to encourage monopole mode. You want to encourage its vibrational mode to be monopole, which means you need an even distribution of stiffness with the bracing, which you do not get with ladder bracing, where the bracing just runs straight across like railroad tracks. Particularly because that type of bracing is going to be well braced across the grain, but in the long dipole direction with the grain, those railroad track braces aren't supporting it really at all, and you're just relying on the stiffness of the grain. So anyway, a lattice bracing gives you more even bracing across both across the grain and with the grain. Okay, so that's the back. Let's see, what do I want to say about the top, except that this really is an exceptional piece of wood, and it's Western red cedar, and I want to see if I can maybe set up the camera and tap this, and I don't know how the tap is going to come out through the shotgun mic on the camera, but hey, we're going to try it. So whenever I have a commission, one of the just very important things that I take time to do is I go through my stash and I find the best damn piece of wood that I can for the top. We're using Western red cedar here because through my conversation with Doug, that's what we determined that would make the most sense for what he's after. And this was just the best piece of Western red cedar that I have right now. So let me find the node. Okay, I think it's right about there. Okay, so I'm not sure how well that's picking up over there on your end, but man, this is just a really good brittle piece of wood, because essentially that's what you're listening for when you're listening for good tone and you're tapping. You are listening for that live, brittle nature of the wood. So think like a piece of glass, of course, is brittle, and so it tends to resonate easily. Let me show you guys what we're going to do for the Rosette here, because that's going to be kind of cool. In fact, if I had had more time today, I was going to do the Rosette and film it, but today's a bit of a rush, so I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about it. All right, so I am planning on doing something like this right here. There's a little, this piece broke right at the front, so that little gap right there when I glue it in is just going to close up. And that's if I use this piece. You know, this Rosette I have had for demo purposes for when I go to shows, so I can talk about the Radial Rosette Maker jig, which is a jig that I sell at ericschaeferguitars.com. Check that out if you're interested in making radial rosettes like you see here, or even radial offset rosettes. This has two elements combined here, which is the fact that all the wood grain points to the center. That's the radial aspect. And the offset part of it is the fact that the outside cut is a different radius than the inside cut. So you just get kind of a cool effect there. But you can do both of those things with the Radial Rosette Maker jig at ericschaeferguitars.com. So anyway, this is normally the rosette that I take just to kind of show people at shows what this thing's capable of. But I may actually be using it on this guitar just because it seems to work so well with aesthetically everything that we're trying to do here. Now, if I do make another rosette, I'll probably make a rosette that looks almost identical to this one for it. But we'll see. So something like that. Here, let me close up that gap. So that'll be fun, and you know what? Maybe I will still make a video of that process because you guys are always very interested in stuff like that. Lastly, I'll talk a little bit about the sides here, which I have a good bit of the work done here. The side braces are installed, and the kerfing is installed, and the blocks. And some things I'm doing a little bit different here is I've added this block right here, and this is simply for accommodating an end pin. Now, in the past, I've used these really small end blocks and have still been able to add a pin here without worrying about any issues of the block splitting or anything like that. So in my experience, it's been fine, but for a little extra insurance, I figure why not put this block here so that there's more meat to install the pin into, and especially if I end up putting a jack on there or something, it's good to have a little more meat to install those things into. Other than that, I mean, so this is just one. I don't know why I decided on this guitar to try this out, but I guess I was just thinking about the bracing pattern and the ability for the back to be freed up a little bit more, and I beveled the back edge of my block here, the neck block, so that there's less contact with the back, because I've always it's always bothered me ever so slightly that we have this much contact area on the back, and it's just not all that necessary to have that. So I'm thinking I can free up the back to vibrate a little bit more with that bevel. And honestly, I would actually bevel this all the way essentially to where the kerfing is if I could get away with it, so it would look more like the end block here, right? But the joint, the mortise, goes pretty deep in here, and the more you bevel this, the closer you get to the back wall of that mortise. So I think I'm just trying to strike a balance here where I'm not pushing that too far, I guess. Anyway, I just wanted to carry you along for some of my thinking there. It's a little bit incomplete, my thought process on this particular aspect, I think, at the moment, but it's a thread that I'm just starting to pull on, I think. Well, alrighty, that was fun. Thank you guys for tuning in again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaeferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.